Let's start with something simple, uncomfortably simple. Your life is not someone else's responsibility. It's yours. That's not a condemnation. It's not a punishment. It's the starting point of real strength. You see, we live in a culture where it's become incredibly convenient to push responsibility outward, to point to society, to parents, to trauma, to institutions, and claim that they are the reason we're stuck, lost, or failing. But there's a dangerous cost to that mindset. The moment you relinquish responsibility, you also relinquish power. You give away your ability to change. Discipline begins with the brutally honest admission that your life, with all of its imperfections, belongs to you. No one is coming to rescue you from your weaknesses. No one is coming to organize your chaos. And if you're waiting for someone to fix your life before you start acting like it matters, you're going to be waiting a long time, maybe forever. That's the first psychological fork in the road. Do you keep blaming the world for what's wrong in your life? Or do you accept the terrifying yet liberating truth that you are the one who has to sort it out? One of the most profound ideas in clinical psychology, and it echoes throughout ancient wisdom traditions as well, is that transformation begins with responsibility. Carl Jung spoke of confronting the shadow, the parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. Viktor Frankl, writing from a Nazi concentration camp, insisted that even when everything is taken from you, you still have one freedom: to choose your response. Why is that? That is the essence of responsibility. You're not just reacting to life. You're stepping forward and engaging with it. You're taking ownership of what's within your grasp, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. This is why I often say clean your room, not because tidiness is a moral virtue, but because it's symbolic. It's a practical, immediate manifestation of order. When you impose order on your personal space, you're teaching your mind that chaos can be confronted and transformed through disciplined action. And it's scalable. If you can bring order to a bedroom, maybe you can bring order to your relationships. Maybe you can bring order to your habits, your ambitions, your future. The reason so many people struggle with discipline is because they're trying to apply it in places they haven't yet earned the authority to act. They want to fix the world while their own life is a disaster. They're yelling about politics, economics, and morality, but they haven't taken the time to master their mornings, their tempers, or their addictions. That's not strength. That's chaos masked as virtue. Discipline, real discipline, starts close to home. It's personal. It's private. It's often invisible to others. And here's the philosophical depth of this. Responsibility is not a burden. It's the precondition for meaning. The more you voluntarily take on, the more significant your life becomes. You don't become disciplined by You become disciplined because you've realized that the alternative, living passively, blaming everything and everyone else, is a slow descent into bitterness and resentment. It corrodes your soul. It makes you weak. It kills potential before it ever has a chance to manifest. The people you admire, the ones who radiate strength and confidence, they're not lucky. They're not chosen. Though they're disciplined. They've wrestled with themselves. They've confronted their own laziness, impulsivity, and fear. They've stopped making excuses. And that's something you can do too, not all at once, not perfectly, but consistently. You start by picking up the pieces around you. You look at your life and ask, where am I contributing to my own suffering? That's a terrifying question. But it's also where freedom begins. You don't need to overhaul your entire existence tomorrow. That's not discipline. That's fantasy. What you need is to identify one thing, just one small thing that you've been avoiding, and take responsibility. Maybe it's cleaning your workspace. Maybe it's apologizing to someone. Maybe it's writing down your goals instead of dreaming them away. Whatever it is, do it today. Not for applause, not for validation, but because it's the right thing to do. The moment you start acting like your life matters, everything changes, not externally, not immediately, but internally. You begin to sense that you're capable of more than you thought. You begin to feel the subtle, steady emergence of strength, and that strength compounds. Over weeks, over months, over years, it becomes character. So if you want discipline, don't chase motivation. Don't wait to feel inspired. Take responsibility. Start with what's in front of you. Own your life, one action at a time, because the alternative, waiting for someone else to fix it, will only keep you exactly where you are. Discipline starts the moment you decide that no one else is coming and that your life is warped. Most people drift through life without a target. They wake up, go to work, distract themselves, go to sleep, and repeat the cycle without ever asking where they're heading. And the problem with that, psychologically, philosophically, and practically, is that if you're not aiming at something, you're not moving forward. You're simply reacting, and that's not living, that's surviving. A life without aim is a life without direction, and a life without direction is vulnerable to chaos. You have to aim at something. That doesn't mean you have to know exactly who you're supposed to become right now. In fact, you can't know, but it does mean you must choose a path, even provisionally, and commit to moving forward along it. People say, well, I don't know what I want. That's fine. But the response to that is not to sit around and wait for clarity to drop from the sky. The response is to choose something worth pursuing, something just out of reach, something meaningful, and then aim at it with everything you've got. In psychological terms, this is critical. The human brain is structured to respond to goals. It's a targeting system. You see, your perception, your motivation, your emotions, these all organize themselves around what you value. If you don't consciously choose a value hierarchy, life will impose one on you. And usually, it won't be a good one. It'll be comfort. It'll be distraction. It'll be whatever numbs the existential discomfort of not knowing where you're going. And that is a recipe for stagnation, depression, and nihilism. You think about this. Even in suffering, if you're pursuing something meaningful, the suffering becomes bearable. Viktor Frankl saw this clearly in the concentration camps. He wrote that those who had a why could bear almost any how. That is not a motivational slogan. That's a psychological and existential truth. Meaning doesn't erase suffering, it redeems it. And the pursuit of a meaningful aim is the single most reliable source of that meaning. But aiming at something isn't just about achievement, it's about orientation, it's about direction. You don't discipline yourself for no reason. You discipline yourself so you can move in a purposeful direction. Otherwise, what are you resisting temptation for? What are you getting out of bed for? What are you saying no to comfort for? If you have no aim, then the entire structure of discipline collapses under the weight of aimlessness. So how do you figure out what to aim at? You don't have to be perfect in your choice. In fact, it's better that you're not. Aim low enough that you'll actually move. Choose something concrete. Maybe it's finishing a project, getting your health in order, reading a book that challenges you, improving a relationship. Then aim at something slightly better, and then better again. What matters is that your trajectory bends upward, not that you're already at the peak. You correct your course as you go. You aim, you act, you learn, you adjust. That's the process. There's a humility in aiming that people often overlook. It requires you to admit where you are and where you're not, and that can be uncomfortable. It forces you to confront your inadequacies and gaps in discipline. But that's precisely the point. If you aim at something just beyond your current competence, you engage in what psychologists call the zone of proximal development. That's where growth occurs, not in safety, not in chaos, but on the border between the known and the unknown. This is also where meaning lies, not in pleasure, not in momentary happiness, but in the uphill battle towards something that matters. When you're locked into a meaningful pursuit, you'll notice something incredible. Time organizes itself. You know what to say no to. You stop wasting hours because now you have something to compare them against. The distractions that used to control you lose their power. That's not magic, that's purpose. And this brings us back to the idea of discipline. Discipline without aim is tyranny. It becomes self-punishment. But discipline in service of a goal, that's structure, that's focus. That's how you build a life that you can be proud of, not because it's perfect, but because it's pointed at something real. If you want to get your life together, start by identifying what's worth aiming at, and don't wait for permission. Don't wait until you're ready. You're never fully ready. You're not supposed to be. You're supposed to grow into the kind of person who can handle the responsibility that your aim requires. And that process, that struggle, that transformation, that's what makes life meaningful. Choose a direction. Aim at it. And let every disciplined step forward remind you that you're building a life with purpose, one deliberate act at a time. There's something people don't want to hear, but they need to. It's this long-term success, stability, meaning none of it happens without structure. None of it happens without the ability to say no to yourself. That's discipline in its purest form. It's not about being rigid, it's about being intentional. And at the heart of discipline is the principle of delayed gratification, the willingness to give up what's immediately comfortable for what is ultimately worthwhile. It's an old idea. The marshmallow test, for instance, is often cited in psychological circles to illustrate this. You put a child in a room, offer them one marshmallow now or two if they wait 15 minutes. It seems like a simple test, but it reveals something profound. The ability to delay gratification predicts all sorts of life outcomes, academic success, emotional regulation, even future wealth. Why? Because life doesn't reward you for taking what's easy. It rewards you for mastering yourself. Now, the modern world doesn't make this easy. Everything is designed to hijack your attention, your time, your impulses. You have entertainment, distraction, and consumption available chief engine arsuth, and most of it is tailored to bypass your rational brain entirely. So unless you actively impose structure on your life, you will be pulled off course. You don't drift toward excellence, you drift toward entropy, toward disorder. And that's where routine comes in, not as some soul-killing ritual, but as a lifeline. People often ask me, why should I follow a routine? Doesn't that make life mechanical? No, it makes life manageable. It makes it coherent. A good routine is like scaffolding. It holds you up when motivation disappears. It gives your energy a direction. Without a structure to carry your goals forward, your best intentions collapse into nothing. You can think about it like this. Your day is a series of choices. Some are small, what you eat when you wake up. Some are larger, how you spend your time, how you manage your emotions. But each choice moves you closer to or further from the person you want to be. Discipline, when embedded into routine, turns those choices into habits, and habits are powerful because they're automatic. You don't have to battle with yourself every morning about whether or not to get out of bed and get to work. You just do it. That's freedom, not from responsibility, but from chaos. There's a myth that discipline restricts your freedom. That's wrong. It refines your freedom. It gives you the capacity to act in the service of your highest values, even when you don't feel like it. That's what separates people who build something meaningful from people who stay stuck. The disciplined person doesn't wait until they're in the mood to do what's necessary. They do what's necessary, and through that process, they reshape what they're in the mood for. You see, your brain learns what matters to you by observing what you do repeatedly. So if every time you feel stressed, you escape into a screen or reach for comfort food or shut down emotionally, your brain takes that as evidence. This is how we handle discomfort, and it gets good at it. But if you train yourself to act in alignment with your goals, especially when it's uncomfortable, you start to rewrite those patterns. You begin to value challenge, to associate difficulty with progress. That's a rewiring of the nervous system itself. That's not just motivation, that's transformation. Now, this isn't to say you should eliminate rest or pleasure. That's not discipline either. That's self-denial, which can become its own form of dysfunction. What I'm talking about is balance with a bias toward order. Earn your comfort. Don't make it the default. Because when everything is indulgence, nothing feels rewarding. Pleasure only has meaning in contrast to effort. Start with something basic. Go to bed and wake up at the same time every day. Eat meals that fuel you, not just comfort you. Schedule time to work on what matters, even if it's only centers minutes a day. Put your phone down when you feel the urge to scroll mindlessly. None of these acts are heroic in isolation, but strung together day after day, they create something formidable. They create resilience. And more importantly, they create trust in yourself, the knowledge that you can rely on your own actions. Over time, that trust becomes self-respect. You begin to look in the mirror and recognize someone capable of pursuing something great, someone who has shaped their time and energy in service of a purpose. That's the deep reward of discipline, not just achievement, but identity. So, if you want to build a life that moves forward, stop chasing constant motivation, build habits, embrace routine, and learn to tell yourself no, not because you're punishing yourself, but because you're aiming at something higher. Discipline isn't deprivation, it's direction. And every time you choose structure over impulse, you step closer to the person life is suffering. That's not just a bleak statement, it's a fundamental truth recognized by every mature psychological and philosophical tradition. To be alive is to confront pain, loss, limitation, betrayal, disappointment, and mortality. And yet, despite this inescapable reality, we act as though the purpose of life is to be comfortable, unbothered, perpetually entertained. But comfort is not meaning, safety is not strength. The real question is not how to avoid suffering, but how to face it, how to face chaos, and remain standing. Discipline is what prepares you for that confrontation, because chaos is inevitable. You will lose people. You will fail at things that matter. You will encounter moments when you have absolutely no idea what to do. And if you haven't trained yourself to respond with order, if you haven't forged yourself into something solid through discipline, then you'll be swept away by the very first wave that hits. This is why I tell people to build themselves into someone who can be relied on, not just by others, but by themselves. In times of chaos, you want to be the person who doesn't fall apart, who doesn't lash out, who doesn't sink into bitterness or collapse into despair. But that doesn't happen automatically. That takes work. It takes confrontation with yourself first and then with the world. You have to voluntarily face what you fear. That's how courage is built, not through reckless bravado, but through disciplined exposure to what threatens you. Carl Jung described the shadow, the parts of ourselves we refuse to see, the chaos within. If you never confront your own darkness, it will rule you from the background. That's why people sabotage themselves, why they repeat toxic patterns, why they project their failures. onto others. They've never looked inward and brought their own chaos into order. And what does that confrontation look like in practice? It looks like facing difficult conversations instead of avoiding them. It looks like admitting where you're weak and taking action rather than making excuses. It looks like not running from pain, but meeting it head on, integrating it into your understanding of life instead of pretending it shouldn't exist. When you choose to face what you would rather avoid, you grow. And when you do that repeatedly, you build a foundation so solid that even the worst days don't undo you.